session. Uh, this is the opening day keynote number 2, the psychology behind learning in virtual spaces, a conversation with Alex Howland, the Virbela co-founder and president, and Alex Klippel, the general co-chair of iLearn 2021. Take it away, Alex and Alex.
Great. Thank you for the introduction, Jonathan. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here on stage with you, Alex. And I apologize for the audience for the name confusion in advance. It's really one of the most exciting developments that I've seen in a long time. And it's such a pleasure and honor to be part of it and developing it, and to have a chance to ask you a couple of questions about your vision behind it.
Awesome. Yeah, appreciate you having me.
Yes. So just to dive in directly, my first question would be, so there are many educational organizations these days that pivoted to remote learning, particularly during the last year's COVID crisis. What are some of the challenges in your view of learning in these virtual spaces?
Yeah, maybe what I'll do is I'll start by even sharing why I founded Virbela in the first place. My background is as an organizational psychologist. I was actually pursuing my PhD in San Diego in organizational psychology back in 2008 or so, and was doing things like assessment centers, developing leadership skills through simulations in person with high potential executives, really. And I was also taking some online classes and found my online classes to really be missing the social community feel that I got in the physical classroom, as well as the experiential exercises that we could do in the classroom that were harder to do in the LMSs and web conferencing platforms of the world. So look to virtual worlds as a place to do leadership development, a place where we could create simulations, bring people together from different parts of the world and have them practice their leadership skills that challenged not only their business acumen, but their emotional intelligence, their cultural intelligence, their ability to operate under stress and pressure. In a team context. So those were some of really the founding principles of why my co-founders and I set out to create Virbela. So fast forward to the pandemic and some of the challenges that we see in online education. I think a lot of them are similar to some of the challenges that I saw in creating Virbela to begin with. One is just this lack of social in spatial presence, right? We have a real passion about being social with folks around us, and those water cooler moments, whether they happen at the water cooler or at lunch or on the way between classes, are really important to the way we operate in learn. We also really operate through routines and habits and use of our spatial memory. Curious, looking out to the audience, how many people here who have attended an event in this auditorium are actually sitting in the same seat that they sat in last time? We have these spatial comforts of kind of sitting in the same places that we do regularly, and that gives us some kind of comfort. We also, are seeing missing human connection and that sense of community, right? A lot of the interactions that happen online are kind of transactional, right? It's teacher delivering information or really focusing on what's at hand rather than the more relational communication that happens in the physical classroom. And this makes it difficult to create these kind of communities of learning and making people feel comfortable engaging and in supporting each other in that development. So I think it's a lot of the reasons we're seeing a lot of kids, and adults spending a lot of time in things like Roblox, Fortnite, in Rec Room to get that kind of community feel that they're not really getting in many classrooms. I shouldn't say all, but many classrooms currently in the COVID environment. And then I think there's also challenges in creating psychologically safe learning environments. So environments where students really feel comfortable being themselves, asking a question that they think might sound silly, taking risks in answering questions, or trying things that they don't feel comfortable doing, and afraid of kind of the reaction from their peers or their teacher. So I think that's a challenge that we have to think about a little bit differently when it's remote. And there's opportunity there, as well as unique challenges. And then, back to the point I brought up earlier, really thinking about experiential learning and the opportunity to learn by doing versus having kind of a passive experience in a learning engagement are some of the challenges I think that we're seeing in a remote setting. I know we have a lot of experts in the room with far vast experience and diverse experiences than I would love to hear later on some of the experiences, the challenges that you're all facing.
Awesome. Yeah, there were so many fascinating aspects that you mentioned, and I would love if we could extend this to about a 2-hour session. But in the interest of time, so just coming back to one of the aspects that you mentioned. So you mentioned psychologically safety, so a safe learning environment. So why is it so important for collaboration, and how can we actually foster that remotely and in a remote environment?
Yeah, so it's important because it's often a distraction. I don't know about other folks, but when they get on video conferencing and see their face up there, right? There's this sense of, somewhat being insecure in focusing on yourself and how maybe your hair looks, or just how you look that day, rather than focusing at the learning at hand. So, also, if I'm afraid to ask a question or share that I'm lost, it becomes a distraction, right? It prevents us from asking the right question. It prevents us from leaning into discomfort into an area that we might not feel comfortable. And that's going to impact both our personal learning, as well as the learning culture and community that we're trying to instill with our students.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, that's awesome. I think that this is adding a lot of insights into what this community actually tries to achieve. So thanks for sharing that. If you look at remote collaboration and from an organizational perspective, so what is it that organizations themselves should be focusing on to create successful virtual learning environments?
Yeah, I think one area is experiment, and certainly the folks in this room and in watching have been or are currently or planning to really experiment with social and spatial platforms, ways of bringing that kind of sense of space back into the classroom in different ways, whether it's through kind of a 2D version that we might see everything from like a Gather or Sakoko, I think was an early example of that, to worlds like Virbela, where most people are joining on a PC or a Mac, or even further, push where possible into fully immersive VR opportunities, or actually putting on one of these headsets where we know it's not extremely inclusive at this point because many people don't have devices, but I think we can start to play with that sense of space and the impact it has in the learning community. I just came from our parent company, EXPI's shareholder event that happened in a Virbela platform. And there'll be, I think, about 20 to 30,000 people, on the platform uh, over the course of the next few days. And when I started working with EXP Realty, there are about 900 agents. These are real estate agents, but they've leveraged the 3D space to build community. And that community has grown from 900 agents to, I think, over 53,000 agents now in about 4.5 years. And really, their secret sauce is the community of learners. They do a ton of kind of uh, scheduled instructor-led training in the platform, but they've also seen uh, self-forming mastermind groups really come together in support the community. So they have EXP Power Girls, they have One EXP, which is a D&I group, and that group has gotten so much momentum that their founding leader is actually on the board of directors of the NASDAQ, publicly traded company now. So it shows how we can use the space, similar to how iLearn's doing here, to cultivate community in communities that typically might have a tough time coming together physically, even if we weren't in times of COVID. So experimenting with these spatial 3D tools is certainly something that's I recommend, and I think could help with some of these virtual challenges. Also really focus on the human connection in community. So what can we do to get beyond just kind of the task at hand? How do we build engaging relationships with folks that are intimate and make us want to actually get together in the physical world when we're able? So what is the power of that community? I think is quite interesting. My staff in the last year has grown from 20 folks to 190 folks, and most of these folks at this point I've never met in a physical world. And just recently, the last 4 or 6 months ago or so, we were feeling that kind of lack of time to spend on a impersonal level. So we got really um, really overt, really intentional about building in time for almost recess, right? Play with one another, time to just share across kind of departments and bring people together on the team that don't typically get to interact. And as a result, we're seeing our employee NPS score going up. We're seeing innovation across teams, teams that, again, that don't typically work together, working on innovation projects or challenges that the organization is coming across. So those are some of those things that we're working on. Also, I'd say, back to this feeling of psychological safety, having those casual times of getting to know one another really helps build those connections. Recently, we've had a challenge that's pushed us a little differently in terms of that feeling of psychological safety. We've actually been dealing with a bit of trolls in the Virbela open campus, and it's forced the team to kind of really scratch our heads as we certainly value openness and inclusivity. With wow, just a few bad actors can negatively impact the psychological safety of our employees and our users. And what is the implication for that for our team as well as our community and from a learning standpoint? So it's been an interesting opportunity for our teams again to come cross departmentally and form kind of self-forming groups to interact really quickly and act quite quickly. And there's still work to be done, for sure. It showed kind of the fragility, is that a word? How fragile, psychological safety can be disrupted in a community. But it also showed that when you have the right values and the right people in your organization that want to learn together, they will persevere in push towards a positive learning environment. Um, so those are a few things, and I know I bounced in a few different directions there in terms of ideas. The other one, I'm really still interested in is creating experiential learning opportunities, whether it's, speed rounds of role playing or, creating 3D immersive simulations and everything in between. I think there's real potential given today's technologies to keep pushing opportunities for experiential learning forward while online.
Yeah, no, I don't mind at all that you sort of touched upon so many different topics. As I said, it would be awesome to have 2 hours for this conversation. That's fascinating. I really appreciate your concerns about inclusivity and diversity, and just wanted to also thank Jonathan for always pointing that out at the beginning of each session. So that's fantastic that that's on your mind as well. Before we go to the Q&A for everyone, and I hog all the time here, maybe one last question. So it is certainly a push towards virtual and immersive, or virtual and remote learning through COVID in ways that probably no one could have imagined before. Many of those changes probably will not go away, and I know that many companies, many organizations are embracing remote learning now as a really valid and valuable alternative for many reasons. If you think about this now in long term, what do you actually expect, or what do you think are the long-term effects of collaborating in virtual worlds remotely?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've spoken to two CEOs of fairly large organizations in the last couple of weeks, and they said somewhat the same thing. They said, I'm sitting right now with my executive assistant and maybe a couple of other people in a really large office by ourselves. Everyone else is remote. We really care about the future of our company. We really care about uh, the culture, of the organization, and that feeling of a united culture. And I don't know what I'm going to do. How do I build that culture? How do I bring people together? And it's fascinating because these are people who've been really successful, quite powerful, big organizations, and quite frankly they are scared, and they're really wanting to be creative. They want to do what's right for their employees as well as their customers, and their big questions are around culture. How do I build that united culture? How do I have this feeling of togetherness? How do we instill kind of our brand? So they're seeing uh, virtual worlds as a place to bring the headquarters to the cloud, right? Give this sense of space to their people where they can still brand it to their organization needs. They can do everything from board meetings to uh, learning, all together in the environment. They can have the water cooler moments around the office. They can manage by walking around. They can shadow other folks for learning perspectives. Uh, so those are some of the things we're hearing there. From my perspective too, is we think of the importance of social skills or emotional intelligence in today's economy. I think about remote collaboration in virtual worlds and think how they can continue to be used to develop social skills and give folks a lot of opportunity to practice those social skills in a safer setting. As I mentioned, I think there'll also be ongoing innovations around experiential learning while remote that we have to solve to increase the learning while people are remote, to make it safer, to make it more engaging, to bring down costs really from a long-term perspective. Well, I think the costs are quite high in creating experiential learning upfront in virtual worlds or virtual reality. Over time, I think we can drastically kind of reduce costs. One of our customers is the Office of Naval Research, and we do fully immersive training simulations with them, and it makes me feel good as an American and a taxpayer because we drastically reduce the cost of training and not requiring real aircraft to go in the air or service members to travel to get to experiential training. We can ship VR kits all over the world or onto ships. Gives them that availability to have access to that engaging real life type activities while safe and while remote.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I tried to monitor the channel, the chat while you were talking, but I'm really poor at multitasking. One comment that I would like to pick up though is from Jamie, who said that maybe we should switch from calling it remote to calling it distributed, which kind of indicates a bit more of a connectivity of a whole that just works in different places.
I think that's a really great point, right? Because we can come together and we can have that feeling of togetherness.
Awesome. I think that my time is definitely up. So from my perspective, awesome. Thank you so much. We do have some extra time reserved for Q&A. So I hand over now to the audience. So please feel free to ask a question. I'm not sure, you might be muted. If that's the case, then I probably should pick questions that you post in the.
I'm definitely okay with people turning on their mics if that's an option, Heather.
Unmute the audience. There we go.
Okay, awesome. Yes, then please feel free to just speak up and ask the questions.
I have a question for Alex, not Alex Klippel, but Alex Howland. Alex, how does the feeling of being there, in other words, like presence, when we're really not there, influence us psychologically in terms of depression? And to give you a little context, I'm president of the school board for a fully online school, and I've talked to a lot of teens who've struggled with depression during the COVID pandemic. And I just wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah. Well, let me start by my thoughts are speculative. Okay, so I don't have. I'll press it with that, and there might be others in the audience that know more about any empirical studies that are out there. But maybe start with the reason, why are they depressed? And I might argue they're depressed potentially because they're lonely. Or at least as one element of their depression. So I think in virtual worlds, what we can do is break down that feeling of loneliness. And what I hear both from the staff at our sister company, eXp Realty, as well as our own staff, is that we feel like we're in the office, right? We feel like we're there from a social standpoint. Right, so that sense of isolation, which is negatively associated with remote work, and I imagine remote learning as well, kind of goes away when you have that co-presence, even virtually, in these in these environments. I also think about different personality types, right? In some people who might struggle face to face might thrive in these virtual environments, and vice versa. So we hear sometimes from introverts that they feel more comfortable speaking up in these environments, but I've also heard from extroverts that they feel less comfortable speaking up in these environments. So I think you get some things kind of both directional. I think some keys are, can you foster an effective culture in community virtually? That's going to be a big win. Can you build in serendipity so people have those casual times to not feel as lonely? Are you providing some safety for folks who don't feel comfortable being on camera and maybe their appearances judged quite regularly? I think those are things that can help. As we saw, can see, just like you could see out on recess, right, in the playground, right, bullying and bad actors can also happen in these platforms. So you need to think about rules of engagement, how you're going to monitor, how you're going to enforce proper behaviors around the environment. I think is quite interesting. I'm not as familiar as I used to be, but think of researchers like Skip Rizzo, uh, who creates virtual therapists, right? AI avatar therapists, and some of his research found that people actually responded better to those avatars than actual real beings. So I think it's an important, interesting question. And if others in the room have ideas or know of research, please speak up, open your mic, and help respond to Dennis.
Great. I see that Jonas has raised his hand. All right.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. Great presentation. My question is to both the panelists is what's the alternative to counter the especially the students? All day they're sitting uh, in front of the screens. And of course, it has somehow an impact or effect on their psychological mindset. So, would a platform like such where we are which um, Virbela has provided, like this platform, should this be used, and would this be more effective than actual live sessions, because this is kind of fun, and it really gives you the ambience of the campus or a school. Thank you.
Alex, you want to take that one first, or would you like me to respond?
Oh, just take it away. So,
All right. So a couple of things. One, I think you got to have the right balance with physical exercise. I think that was the first part of your question, and practice what you preach, right? I put on the COVID 10 or 15, whatever it was, right, because I was glued to my seat here in operating in the virtual world. So I think we need to set the right kind of boundaries and expectations and lead by example of how we get our physical exercise in as well, even if we're not walking to our car or walking across campus or wherever it is that we used to get our exercise. Or how do you leverage the time that you save in your commute to get some exercise is certainly important for our well-beings physically and mentally. In terms of, is this a good place for education? Of course, I'm the most biased person in the room, and I believe it is. I don't believe it's the only tool. I think there's a number of tools that are out there that have different pros and cons, but this feeling of campus, this place of where I go to, I think is powerful. And when you ignite the community and really can get the network to a size where there's really kind of always community happening, is where we really see the benefits of the campus-like feel in these platforms. So we've seen great engagements like iLearn, uh, Stanford Business School has used Virbela for a number of years with cohorts of around 300 who are logging in from, I think, 100 different countries to go through a year-long executive education experience together. And that cohort feel they find really successful. And again, they use other tools as well, not just Virbela, but Virbela gives them that feeling of coming together, that sense of co-presence that helps build the culture of the cohort. Those are a couple examples. Again, other ideas from audience members or what they've seen be successful or not successful, certainly open to hearing.
Yeah, we can actually connect this to a comment by Andy that we are all looking forward to the immersive version of Virbela, right? So, and also as Minor this morning mentioned, immersive technology had always had these promises. It's still lagging a little bit behind in terms of being really a scalable tool. But at least some of the exercises might come back through that way as well. So
Yeah, we have a long way to go.
yeah.
And the ecosystem, is going to keep getting better too, right? In terms of hardware, both computers, smartphones, VR headsets. Hopefully they keep getting better and hopefully more affordable. For us, we are trying to push boundaries within today's ecosystem. So maybe what's unique in what we strive for with this Virbela platform is we push community with this campus-like environment. We push the number of folks that we can get in. So my presentation earlier today at the shareholder summit, there was about 900 people in an auditorium that looked identical to this. And we actually had to have we chose to have an overflow auditorium where it was also being streamed to, I think, 800 or 900 other folks in a different auditorium. And then it was also being live streamed to YouTube, where another 600 or 700 people were watching. So in here, in this platform, we're pushing kind of size, numbers we can get to, the community feel. We want it to be ease of access in the sense of not needing a VR headset or a high-end gaming computer to get in. Most people's commodity hardware, commodity internet connection, people should be able to get in. And with that inclusivity, we really see the value as the communities that come together. Not the technology itself, but the community that comes together and the engagements that happen on the platform. Some of you hopefully have also tried our Frame VR product, which is a web VR platform. So you can access it right from the browser and anything with a browser. So mobile, PC, Mac, VR headset, you can get into Frame with a click of a button. And we're doing that because we really believe in the importance, again, of inclusivity. Not being a VR first company, but being inclusive in terms of how communities come together. And the more we can do that more simply, the greater the adoption. So we certainly are pushing the boundaries of what's possible on the web with Frame. It can't handle the masses that we can handle right now in Virbela, but as the ecosystem changes, we think we'll be able to push larger and larger groups. We also think about, again, what the project I mentioned with the military, which is really high end, really bleeding edge, frankly expensive, right, for us to build right now. But that's allowing us to push the boundaries of what's possible from an experiential learning capability. and have hopes that further down the line we can provide tools for other third-party developers to be doing some of that simulation development on their own, because we certainly won't be able to do it all ourselves.
Yeah, that's awesome. So we are about 6 minutes over time. I think that's a good point to maybe come to an end. I think that you also addressed a lot of questions in answering in providing your insights. So everything that has to do with sort of the next steps, everything from more facial expressions to gamification and adaptation. So we are very, very much looking forward to the next steps, and we are very much looking forward to the next versions of Virbela. We really appreciate that we are here, that we are able to use Virbela as the campus for iLearn. So I would like to ask everyone joining me, thanking Alex for this fascinating and fantastic behind the scenes visionary perspective on Virbela and distributed learning. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you all. It's really an honor to have iLearn on the platform, as well as the community that comes with it. We really appreciate the work and research that comes out of this organization. Quite frankly, I've learned from that research, over the years, and it's helped inspire Virbela itself. So hope to continue the engagement for many years to come.
Awesome. Thank you.
Happy to hang out in the campus for a few minutes too. If anyone has any follow-up questions or anything, happy to hang out.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yes.
Great. I'm going to actually step in and stop our live stream crew. So if you'll just let me wrap us up. The main event has finished. We're going to stick around for a few minutes, but the live stream will now close. Thank you again to our videographers, Tony Cube Studios, and the YouTube audience.